Another day and another interesting Nintendo Switch port. This time around it's Saints Row 4, which was first released back in 2013, but saw its next-gen debut in 2015. Developed by Volition and published by Deep Silver, with Koch Media doing the honours on Nintendo Switch, and a thanks to those guys for the review copy. While I enjoyed Saints Row 3, I never really felt like it quite achieved what it set out to. There were too many tropes from either Grand Theft Auto or other similar open world games, despite some really good moments in it. Now I have to say, straight off the bat, 4 is one of the most unusual, insane and enjoyable games I think I've played in a long time. But how does it perform and run on the Nintendo Switch? Well, let's find out. The game starts in similarly bombastic fashion, taking place just a few months after the original game ended and placing you once again as the boss of the Saints. Certain events transpire, which lead to you then becoming the President of the United States of America. Now, unfortunately, a rather douchey alien called Zinyak rocks up and decides he's going to destroy the world. And that's where your story really begins in earnest. Saints Row 4 is very much a parody of the Matrix series, placing you in the role of Neo. Credit has to go to the writing here because this is no half-hearted attempt. The entire story is very well written, albeit totally insane.
Paper earlier. Could you fetch it here?
Sure thing, dear.
The developers have run free with their imagination, and I found that narrative was both completely unexpected from one moment to the next, and despite playing on many over-the-top action tropes, it's handled very well, both in terms of the voice acting, but also the on-screen choreography. While certainly not a cinematic masterpiece, think something more along the lines of Hot Shots Part 2, which manages to rip from several other films and still be entertaining and well put together and bonkers. Writers Jason Blair, Jeffrey Belowski and Tony Bedard have done a really good job of ensuring that it's not a superficial throwaway experience, but that you actually find yourself hooked and well along for a very unusual ride. It's impressive and certainly more accomplished than Saints Row 3. The gameplay then, you control your character from a third-person perspective. You'll initially be able to design and customize your character in any which way you please. For me, that meant spamming the random button until I found a look that I was pleased with. I mentioned in the introduction that the game takes heavy inspiration from the Matrix films, and without too much of a spoiler, the majority of your experience takes place inside a simulation. This was created by Zinyak to hold you, but just as with the Matrix, that doesn't quite work out to plan. I thought the mission implementation was really good. Holding the select button will bring up your current main missions as well as side, and it's really very easy to get into these. Equally impressive are how varied these are. I don't think there have been two missions where I thought, oh, I've seen this before. And it feels very much like the developers have gone out of their way to try and minimize the number of fetch type quests that we see in all open world games. And even when some more cliche missions come up, they'll be self-referentially changed halfway through, such as having to wait for an hour while defending someone, and the character pointing out that these things usually only last about 3 minutes. They haven't scrimped on the weapons either. There are a vast quantity of different types, but it was also nice that these were gradually fed to the player rather than all being given from the offset. And you're looking at around about 40 different weapons in total. At certain points throughout the game, you'll have to fight guardian aliens, which are sent down to put a stop to your shenanigans. And once you can take these out, you'll gain their special ability. You'll be loaded into a training simulator and given the chance to test these out. I guess it's a testament to the game's design that personally I haven't felt the need to enter any of the vehicles. You can do this if you choose, you can run and dash into them, but your super speed run and jump mechanic, oh my goodness, they're so much fun. If you've played any of the Spider-Man games on PS4, you'll know the sense of freedom that I'm talking about here, and the ability to jump up the side of buildings, come crashing down on top of enemies, or just run through traffic itself feels incredibly freeing. To add in some much needed exploration and discovery, they've also included hidden data packages. These blue glowing areas, when collected, will go towards allowing you to upgrade your superpowers. And as you unlock the aforementioned super abilities, such as the ground stomp, you can then reveal hidden ones. And as such, you will feel your character getting progressively more strong, quick, agile, and being able to jump much further. Personally, it felt to me in past games like Saints Row was merely trying to imitate some of the best elements of genre classics such as GTA, but that here they've really landed on their feet and they know what they're doing. And in fact, it's a very technically impressive game. The city has a large overworld map. There'll be loads of different activities and events that you can take part in, but I felt not particularly compelled to do many of these. This was mainly due to the mainline story actually hooking me in for once. As I mentioned, from moment to moment, the The gameplay, as well as the way that you have to play, changes. There are action set pieces, like trying to fly your spacecraft out of an alien base. But it was where the developers really let their hair down and just tried out random ideas that I thought it succeeded the most. Things like the 8-bit pixel text-based adventure that you have to complete, or the top-down tank battles, and even some sections which reminded me of Tron. The further you get into Saints Row 4, the more you can feel the developers just relax and almost get into their stride. Understandably, the game isn't without its flaws. At points, it feels a little clunky and dated, and while the controls, particularly the gyro, are well implemented, the way the character moves and the enemy artificial intelligence can be a touch lacking. Equally, a few of the design choices, such as the Guardian bosses and how you're granted their abilities, get a touch repetitive once you've done them for the 4th or 5th time. Now, in terms of game modes, you obviously have different difficulties, but you also have the ability to play through the entire experience cooperatively online. While we couldn't try the co-op because pre-release and no one else was playing it, in previous iterations it's worked well. We'll discuss overall performance in the next section, but in terms of the gameplay, if you can cope with the crude humour, bombastic set pieces and occasional nudity, I think you're going to enjoy this game immensely. Gameplay scores 18 out of 20, while the controls are decent, but I would have liked to see a couple more options. They score 16 out of 20. Visually, Saints Row 4 benefits from the work they've done on the previous title. Straight out the box, you can use dynamic resolution scaling to improve the frame rate, but obviously this will downgrade the visuals from time to time to keep things ticking over nicely. Now in practice, I didn't notice a huge amount of difference on the fly, and having the game keep a nice fluid motion was preferential. It does feel like there's an uncapped frame rate when you're in this dynamic resolution scaling mode, and there are certainly times where it came all the way up to 60 frames per second. This was usually seen when you were in the training screens. If you'd rather keep the resolution consistent at the cost of some of the frames per second, then this is also an option. Personally, I found the image to be quite grainy overall, and yes, there is a film grain filter over the whole game, but even when that's switched off, the textures and everything look quite muddy. It's certainly not a poor looking game, but when compared to either the PC or PS4, there's a noticeable drop in image quality. When playing in handheld, everything looks quite good, largely due to the smaller screen, and on the whole I wouldn't say the graphics would stop me buying the Switch version, but if I wasn't particularly keen on playing it handheld, then there really would be no reason to go for it. This one is fully Switch-Lite compatible as you'd expect, and I've really got to take my hat off to some of the visual choices in terms of the design from Stephen Quirk. Those Tron elements and even the interiors of the spaceship, they're really quite impressive. And it's in these most creative moments that I enjoyed the game the most. Equally good then is the soundtrack from Malcolm Kirby Jr. Some of the popular songs that you would recognise from films and that you would expect to see in these scenes are here. Now, I'll probably get copyright striked if I play them, but you'll be hearing such wonders as Aerosmith, as well as many other big hits that are also playable on the in-game radio, and you can create your own playlists. Overall, the visuals are good then, but they are a touch dated and certainly weaker than other systems. They score 14 out of 20. The audio, on the other hand, is excellent, and some of the soundtrack choices are quite brilliant. That scores 18 out of 20. The game's going to set you back £34.99, and this is the re-elected edition, which comes with a vast number of DLC additions. What I will say is that when this version was launched on PS4, it only cost $29.99, so I think there is a touch of Switch tax there. The physical version of this will be available, and I've already been able to find that for £29.99, and I'm sure that price is only going to drop over the coming weeks and months. Depending on your overall skill level, you're looking at around about 30 to 50 hours of gameplay, which is a decent little chunk. But if you're anything like me, you could spend a few hours just doing nothing. I really enjoyed the departure from the previous game and how they allowed the over-the-top superpowers to heighten the gameplay rather than just being there because. You will invariably be able to find it much cheaper now on other consoles, but if the Switch is your only option, this is still a decent bet. There's a lot of content here, and they haven't gone for a full price, which is nice. Overall though, I'd say value gets a 16 out of 20. It would have been nice to see a slightly lower price, especially digitally, on the Nintendo Switch.
Hello, human.
Holy sh! Earth is gone, and nothing we do today is going to change that.
So there we have it. I enjoyed this one a lot more than number 3. The storyline was more concise and well written, and the tongue-in-cheek moments more comical rather than cringy, and the game includes some real flair from the developers. Overall, it scores a switch-up score of 82%. Really the most important score here is that gameplay and story score, which is 18, and this is a great game. I really enjoyed it, and I think you will as well. And if the Switch is the only way you can play it, you'll certainly get your money's worth. A big thanks to the developers for the review copy. I hope you guys are all safe and well, and thanks to the new patrons. Becoming a patron at this time, man, that's a real commitment, and it's totally unnecessary, but we do appreciate it. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!